Hi everyone, this is Callie. Thanks so much for being here with me today. Today's card features the Sunflower Field embossing folder. I did do a feature last month that also featured this particular product. I did ink blending on that and did a spotlight die cutting technique. For this technique today, I'm going to be doing some watercoloring using the Karin Brushmarker Pro markers. So we're going to be doing some watercoloring. It's very similar to coloring with zigs. So I hope you'll enjoy this process. This embossing folder also comes with a coordinating die, and so I'm die cutting the sunflower out from Bristol Smooth cardstock, which is what I also embossed my full panel on. So now I'm going to put that die cut image into my embossing folder and line it up. You can tape it down if you're not sure of yourself, but I can see it pretty well and feel pretty comfortable with embossing it as is without any adhesive. And then it embosses that one sunflower onto that piece, and now we can start watercoloring. Again, I'm using the Karin Brushmarker Pro markers, and they're kind of like zigs. They're water-based pigment. So in order to create a palette for myself, I'm just using my glass mat board that I'm currently working on. You can use an acrylic block if you work on something more porous. Bristol Smooth cardstock is normally very forgiving for zigs and watercolor pigments like this. However, because I run the paper through my die cutting machine, I feel like it compresses the paper a little bit, so it doesn't function quite as nicely as it normally would without being compressed in a die cutting machine. So that's why I find that picking up the watercolor pigment from a glass board or a non-porous material with a damp brush and applying it to the paper is much more forgiving than using a marker and applying it to the paper and then drawing it out with a damp, clean brush, if that makes sense. So if the pigment is already on the brush, I'm finding that it's easier to draw or blend that color out versus applying pen to paper and then drawing out that color with a damp brush. Anyway, I hope that makes sense. So I've colored all of the sunflower petals with yellow and a bit of orange at the base of the petals. And then I moved on towards the center of the sunflowers with some browns. Now you'll see the brown wants to flare out and fan out into the petals. I'm not going to be too worried about that because it does lighten up quite a bit when it dries. And I'm just going to go over that with some orange and then add some yellow to fan it all out and blend it out towards the edges of the sunflower. And then I'm going to go back into the center again and kind of intensify that brown. I'm doing somewhat of a ring. If you look at sunflower photos, there's always a ring of some sort at the center of them. So I'm just trying to imitate real life. So when I'm done with that, I'll go ahead and move on to my full sunflower panel. So it's a lot to watercolor. You kind of get the gist of it as I go along, but right now, that first sunflower that I worked on is the sunflower that I'm going to be covering up. So I'm just working on the leaves on that one. I'm not going to worry about the center. And then I'll work on the leaves, not the leaves, but the petals on all of the other sunflowers. Again, going over it with a light shade of yellow and then intensifying the base of the petals with some orange. And when I'm done doing that, I'll do all of the centers at once, working with a lighter brown to fully cover the base and center of the flowers, and then I'll go in with a darker brown to intensify and create more dimension and depth. So as you can see, by the time I've worked my way through the entire panel and the other areas have dried, it does lighten quite a bit. So I go back in with the darker browns to intensify again and create more depth and more contrast in the colors, and that'll just make it a little bit more interesting. To clean up my panel, I'm cutting 1/8 of an inch off all of the sides, and that'll just create a crisp edge all the way around our watercolor panel. Now to give it more interest, I'm going to use some white paint here that I keep in a jar. It's nice and loose paint. I just use acrylic paint and I just water it down to the consistency that I like for splattering panels with. And then I use the same brush every time to use for splattering. And when I'm done with that and it's all dry, I'm going to use the new Simon Says Stamp 3D foam squares. And there are a pack of squares that are small and large in white. And I'm going to use that big one because it's a great size for the center of the sunflower. And then that's going to help me attach this sunflower that I did individually and pop it up and give it plenty of dimension on my panel. So now that our panel is done, we're going to go ahead and die cut our sentiment. This Hello Sunshine die seems to be perfect for the Sunflower Fields embossing folder because I've seen lots of projects with these paired together. So I've decided to do the same. I die cut that background piece in vellum, and then for the actual sentiment I use some black glossy cardstock. I'm using some liquid adhesive here to attach the Hello Sunshine word to that vellum background, and then I'll finish by dotting the I on the word sunshine to finish up. Now, because our background is embossed, it's a little bit trickier to adhere vellum. I want it to attach well with a little bit of dimension, so I went ahead and used the same 3D foam adhesive that I used to attach my sunflower, and I'm just going to cut little strips out of that and attach it to the back of the letters before adhering it to the panel. That will make sure that more area than not will attach itself to the embossed background and adhere well. On the back of the panel, I'm going to use dot tape runner. Again, we have embossed and debossed areas, so I just want to make sure there's plenty of adhesive that will stick itself to another panel of cardstock, in this case a card base. So the dot adhesive is really great for that on the back. And then last but not least, to finish my card, I'm going to add some confetti sequins, and this mix is conveniently called the Sunflower Fields mix. And that finishes my card for today. I hope you enjoyed this. If you're interested in any of the products that I use, be sure to check out the links below as well as on my blog. Everything will be linked for your convenience. And if you enjoyed this, I'd appreciate it if you gave this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. I'm going to be linking 2 more videos for you to see if you're interested in seeing more. Otherwise, I hope you all have a great day. Bye, everyone.